I'm Tiki Barber. Sal Licata is in the house with the old school headphones instead of the earbuds like me and BT go with. I'm looking forward to this show. I'm sure you guys will as well. 877-337-6666. We'll get to the Mets eventually. We'll get to a little bit on the Yankees, Liv, and Quinnipiac. That was awesome. I just heard that interview winning their first national championship. But Sal, this is the first time we've ever worked together, man.
As I was saying,
I've been on your show.
Right. I've interviewed you. Yeah, back at the old fan studios for sure. Even SNY at times. It's first time doing a show together. I appreciate you guys having me sit in here.
And we'll get on your Mets in just a little bit. But, you know, we saw this over the weekend. Odell Beckham Jr. was supposed to meet with the New York Jets today. And we end up seeing him signing with the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. And it makes sense because they were going to pay him a ton of money. He's got an odd-looking contract. It's $15 million guaranteed, 1.1 in his base salary and 13 change in his signing bonus. But it almost feels to me like he used the Jets. He set up the Jets in order to go get paid someplace else. And it's a shame because I know the Jets have a focus only on winning. It's the most important thing that they need to do this next season. It's not about developing XYZ player or putting on a good show or getting people in the house. It's about winning. That's why this whole Aaron Rodgers situation has been dominating our headlines. And Odell, he was the next piece towards winning, and he left them out to dry. I mean, I don't know how people in New York feel about him. I know how Giants fans feel.
Right.
It's very conflicted. Now I feel like the Jet fan has a reason to fully hate Odell Beckham Jr. for hanging him out and using them so he could go get this deal with Baltimore.
So yesterday, Easter or whatever, hanging out with the family, and then I get word of this news, right? I see it either on Twitter or somebody texts me, whatever it was, and my first thought was, this is one of the greatest days in the history of New York sports. Thank goodness Odell will be somebody else's problem. And I think you're right, Tiki, where he did use the Jets. Clearly, this shows you, that Odell cares about Odell, which is fine. Go make the most money. I'm not going to knock somebody for doing that. But this would have been a disaster had he come to the Jets, where I think it would have hurt Garrett Wilson and the potential development of him. I don't think he should go to the Giants where they have good chemistry. So I am happy. Look, he's talented. I'm glad Odell's gone. Let Baltimore enjoy him.
Here's the thing. I hear what you're saying. Garrett Wilson was Offensive Rookie of the Year. Love the kid. Think he's going to be fantastic for years to come, depending on who his quarterback is, of course. I guess I like Alan Lazard. I know he was mostly in an Aaron Rodgers backed offense, so you had one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and in theory you should have him this year, which we'll get to in a second because I think Joe Douglas set himself up for something that nobody's talking about. Alan Lazard, I don't know how he's going to fully perform once he gets here. Mecole Hardman, he's a gadget guy that Kansas City was able to take advantage of. Corey Davis, they needed Odell because they need a playmaker. They need more playmakers on offense, especially after trading. Who was the receiver they traded this past?
Eli Moore?
Elijah Moore. So they move Elijah Moore. As many playmakers as you can get, it would have been beneficial for this team to win. They have to win. And if they're all in on Aaron Rodgers, they needed to be all in on getting more pieces for Aaron Rodgers.
Which, by the way, they were. They were all in on Odell Beckham, but they're not going to go to that extent, right? I don't know if they could fit it in the cap. You know the structure of it better than I would.
Well, I mean, you know what Odell's cap hit is for Baltimore?
$4 million or something?
Less than $4 million.
Right,
less than $4 million.
So they were not going to commit, though, $15 million, potentially $18 million on Odell Beckham.
If it helps you win, and you end up having Aaron Rodgers, and then Odell Beckham's here. I know he didn't technically win. He wasn't there for most of the game where the Rams won the Super Bowl, but he was the reason that they were playing so dynamically in Los Angeles because he's such a great threat as a crosser, as a deep over guy, just a go route guy. Hopefully he has that back, but if he does, the Jets truly would have had a chance to win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback.
And you don't think they could now because they lost Odell?
I just don't know where that experience is in the wide receiver room. And again, I like Alan Lazard, I really do, but I don't know what he's fully going to be, who he's going to be. Odell hung this Jets team out to dry, and he makes him a villain. But I think it's one of those. Maybe it ends up being the best thing for the New York Jets. But man, if Odell would have been a New York Jet, it would have been hard to deny how great they could be.
Well, how sexy it would be, right? All the weapons, to your point. But let me ask you, don't you think the Jets would be better off building a team out where they already have weapons with Garrett Wilson? You love him. I think he's an absolute stud and going to be a true number one, especially with Aaron Rodgers throwing to him. What about building in the trenches more so on the offensive line, investing that money there?
Possibly, but here's the reality of what the Jets are doing. And you know this because you've watched football as long as I have. You've been a fan. I obviously played.
Sure.
When you draft a quarterback, as the Jets did 2 years ago, and this isn't about Zach Wilson, I'm not going there, but when you draft a quarterback in the first round like the Jets did, it basically gives you 5 years. 5 years, you figure it out. He's either going to get it, he's not, and if he does it in 5 years, guess what? Somebody's head's rolling, whether it's a coach, a coordinator, or the general manager. Well, we know it's not working out with Zach Wilson, so they have to fix it. They have to go find the solution for their next 3 seasons. That presumably is Aaron Rodgers. And so if you go get Aaron Rodgers, you have to now win. You almost have to win a championship. And I think Odell Beckham Jr. gave them a much greater opportunity to try to go win a championship than this current construction of their wide receiver core. Now, look, I can have hope in these guys. I can say, Corey Davis could, be a good veteran, a good sage veteran.
They may cut him anyway.
Exactly. But who else is catching the football?
Well, Garrett Wilson, I think, is a legitimate stud.
But you can't just have one.
What about the negative impact that Odell potentially could have had on a young star? Odell's all about him, Tiki. You know that. It's Odell. And by the way, he's a great player. Like, we get at the talent. And there's another question mark about him coming off a significant injury.
Yeah.
But forget about that. Let's assume he is Odell. He's going to want the ball. He's going to want to be front and center. They have a legit young stud in Garrett Wilson. Don't you think Odell maybe could have impacted his growth as a legit star?
I think Odell would have done for Garrett Wilson what Odell did for the Rams. He wasn't a distraction in Los Angeles. He wasn't a pain in the ass.
But he was only there, 6 weeks?
Yeah, exactly. But, what's he going to be here for? 6 months?
Yeah, right, a year, right.
6 months, 8 months?
1 year, you could have sold me on it. But,
yeah.
And I also don't think the Jets didn't do it because, I wouldn't want him to begin with. So we differ on that. I don't think the Jets are thinking that they wanted Odell, I guess just not at that cost.
I don't think Odell had any intention of coming to New York.
You think he just flat out used him?
I think he flat out used the New York Jets. And it's striking because the last team who I would guess would get used by Odell would be the Jets. Joe Douglas has been so good with free agent moves, with trades, with managing what's been going on around the chaos that normally is the New York Jets, that I'm shocked by it. Right? And maybe they had nothing to do with it.
Well, didn't Odell come back to them though?
He did, but
I don't know the whole. I'm just going based off the reports.
We don't know what actually was going on. Maybe it was more Odell's side putting it out there that he was coming to the Jets and that he wanted to potentially sign with the Jets, that this meeting was going to happen on Monday. But
then after the Ravens offer, Odell goes back to the reports were that he goes back to the Jets. Hey,
yes.
Can you match it? And they said, hell no, we're not matching that.
I know. So he basically used the Jets
right.
to get the Ravens much more interested. Our friends at Town Fair Tire remind us that you at Town Fair Tire always get the guaranteed lowest prices on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. 877-337-6666. What is your belief that the Jets will have a viable offense and system this year?
I think they're going to be great. I really do. Now, Super Bowl winning, I don't know, but they're in the conversation once Aaron Rodgers officially becomes a Jet. See, I love Garrett Wilson, and I also believe, Tiki, building inside out. Now, the Jets are at a point where they should be close to a complete team. The one thing that was clearly missing was the quarterback. So when I say inside out, I mean in the trenches. Offensive line, defense first, then you build out. But they've already done that with building out. And look, you can never have enough wide receivers. I get it, skill position players. So there was a part of me that would have been excited about the talent of Odell. But I'm more excited about the development of Garrett Wilson, their own legitimate superstar. And I think Rodgers is going to make him and everybody else in that wide receivers room better.
Yeah, now we talked about this a couple weeks ago on our show because Mekhi Becton put some photos out of how he's been working out. And looking. He looked great. I still worry about his legs. His legs look a little skinny, but whatever. That is what it is when you're 370 pounds.
Not squatting enough or what?
Now I think, I just don't think it's just hard when your body is shaped that way. It's hard to really build lower body strength. relative to your upper body weight. Now, he looks lean. He looks like he's 340 pounds as opposed to 370. And if that's the case, and it's him and then Laken Tomlinson, who they brought in free agency, whoever the center is, and then AVT, and then Max Mitchell, if he comes back from his injury, I think their offensive line is okay. And I think their tight end room is really good. Their running back room is fantastic.
How about Hall coming back off that injury?
You never know. You really never know. Some guys just get it right away. Others, it takes a couple of months once you start actually running again. But
you think it's fear or just knowing, like you're timid maybe or a little trepid?
I think it's that. You just don't know.
You're worried about something because you know the rigorous work that it took you to get back.
Until you do it, until you get banged around, till you fall 15, 20 times, till you land on it wrong, till you twist it, and it's okay, then you say, okay, I'm fine. I'm good to go. But even if he's not fully healthy, Bam Knight is there. And so I look at this team, and I say, running back, check. Tight end room, check. Offensive line, big assumption on Mekhi Becton, but even without it, pretty much check. You now need playmakers. In the NFL, it's become about these dynamic wide receivers. Think about all of the teams that have surrounded their quarterbacks with elite wide receiving. Josh Allen up in Buffalo, they did this. Kansas City, they've done this with Pat Mahomes. Hell, even Tua down in Miami, you throw just two great wide receivers around him.
But the argument against that would be
the same way.
Mahomes this year lost all his big weapons and I know it's Patrick Mahomes.
But he had Travis Kelce.
Right,
and so I think that if Odell would have ended up a Jet, it would have been hard for me to ignore / hate on this Jets option of being one of the teams that represent the AFC.
Do you think Odell is a number one right now still?
I think he is 1A.
Because that's still another, like, there are two things or multiple things at hand here, but that's one of them. What is Odell the player? If we knew, guaranteed he was still the same guy.
It's impossible to know.
You're right. We don't know that. So that's question number one. And then his impact. I look at him as a selfish player, and I don't know if he's matured.
But don't you think he's past that?
I don't know. I was saying this on the air the other day or whatever it was, a couple weeks ago when this came up. I would like to sit there. It's easy for me from afar to be like, oh, yeah, well, I think this or that. But I'm not having him in the room like Joe Douglas to sit and talk to him to see if I feel like he's taken accountability and matured. So I haven't seen it. You go over the whole plane incident. It's just, it seems like it's always something with Odell. I'm not sure he's matured enough or become less selfish, even at this point. I would worry about that. You don't have any concern?
Well, I don't. In the plane incident, I mean, I almost feel, after seeing the whole thing, I feel for him. Because he was out of it, whatever he was on, whether it was sleeping pills or something else, whatever. His emotion got heightened because someone was coming at him in a twisted manner.
Understood.
Right? So I'm not saying I forgive him for it because you're still a highly visible professional star.
He should know by now, right?
Walk away from it.
Right.
But I understand how you can get emotional in a moment and start doing things that are untoward.
So I forget that.
Forget that.
Giant stuff, Cleveland stuff.
Forget the Giant stuff.
Okay.
Forget the Cleveland stuff because that really wasn't that bad. It was more, I look at what he just immediately did, and it was 2 seasons ago. When now we think about it, it's a little bit crazy. He sat out an entire year. In Los Angeles, he was the model wide receiver. He was exactly what that team needed to go win a championship. And I'm not saying he's matured as a person, but I've had conversations with him, and the public persona that we talk about with Odell is very different than who he is sitting having a one-on-one conversation. In fact, if you sat in a room and had a conversation with him, you'd leave it and say, dude, I love that guy.
Well, all the teammates love him, right?
That's exactly right.
And that's why I'm trying to be fair. Like, I don't know him, but I know of his... See, to me, it seems like he's all about himself and he craves attention.
But what's wrong with that? If you're a baller, who cares?
Well, but that's... I never felt that was good for the team. Especially when look, he played under your guy Coughlin when he first came up, and even Coughlin couldn't control him, which I thought was telling that Tom knew he needed his talent to maybe hang on, so he let him get away with stuff he normally wouldn't let guys get away with. But then it got to a point where it was just always about Odell. I think some of it he brings on himself. I'd love to sit in a room with him and see, because I don't want to judge him without knowing him, but I could only go based off of what we know publicly.
I would tell you, Sal, I was surprised that I felt that way. Because I only did it because of games that I was calling. I was doing stuff with Fox, actually, with Rondé, calling a game, and we had the Giants. and we requested to talk to Odell. We sat in the room, had a conversation with Odell. I left. I had never met him,
right?
Other than in passing. I never sat and had conversations with him. He had this brand new tattoo on his leg. We started talking about the tattoo. He gets deep into the meaning of it.
Was that the Michael Jackson one?
No, it was before that.
Oh,
maybe. It was a couple of other ones. And I was like, dude, man, this guy is deep. Like, I get why when we crush him, his teammates defend him. And all the stuff that happened on the, with the Coughlin era, with the
net
kicking net and all that stuff, the fight,
the Josh Norman,
Josh Norman fight. It almost makes you forget how great of a player he is, but also how people love him. And so I know the narrative is he'd be bad for your locker room, but I think the opposite is actually true. And so as I look at this Jets team and what they need, which is alphas, they need guys who know they can win, who are completely confident in who they are. Odell would have been great for the Jets. And he hung him out to dry, and now he's with Baltimore, which probably ensures that Lamar Jackson is going to be a Raven.
You would assume he's not going there without Lamar, but who knows? That's yet to be seen. One last thing on this, Tiki, because I'm curious about this. I know the Jets were rumored to be getting him more closely than the Giants. Giants, I would argue, need a wide receiver more. Like, they actually need one more than just because they don't have Garrett Wilson.
That's a good point. I just don't think the Giants were going to spend that much money.
So you think it's about money?
Yeah. Well, see, the reason that the Ravens can do this is that they are willing to, how the best way to say this, compromise their future cap for winning right now, and more importantly, keeping Lamar Jackson happy.
Right. They would not make this move if they didn't believe it would help keeping Lamar.
The Giants aren't doing that. They are not going to push things out forward. You go look at Odell's contract. It's one line item, but the contract is basically 5 years for proration purposes for the signing bonus. The Giants aren't going to do that. They're not going to compromise themselves that way.
They couldn't get to that number for 1 year, obviously.
They couldn't get to that number for 1 year because they simply don't have the cap space. 877-337-6666. Let's get Eric, who's down in Miami. What's up, Eric? Welcome to the show.
What's going on, guys? Listen, I'm a huge Jet fan down here, and we don't need this. You know what I mean? It would have been a great luxury. You know what I mean? You have that one Rolex. Do you really need that second Rolex?
I mean, if you got the money, hey,
how many?
If you got the money, right?
But I got 3 kids. You know what I mean? And the 3 kids I'm talking about, in actuality, I do have them, but the wide receiver room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These guys, now I'd rather keep Corey Davis. I don't know if he's a part of this deal or not, guys, and I think we should talk about that more into detail because now I'd rather him not be a part of the deal with the Packers.
Yeah, well, you're talking about Corey Davis potentially being part of the trade package so that the Packers feel whatever better.
Yeah, if it takes Corey Davis to get Rodgers, see ya, bye Corey Davis,
exactly.
Get somebody else. And Corey Davis dropped too many balls anyway for my liking.
That's not even a conversation.
Yeah, they'll be able to find another wide receiver. I do agree though, Tiki. I like his word of a luxury. Now it would have been nice.
Appreciate you, Eric.
But I feel like it would have been a luxury for the Jets, not necessary. And I do still believe, without even sitting with him, and I'll trust obviously somebody who did sit with him in you. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. I still think even just his presence could kind of neuter a little bit, for lack of a better term, Garrett Wilson and his development. I want Garrett Wilson to develop into that number one alpha male. This is my team. I was drafted here. I'm the star wide receiver, not anybody else.
Well, I think that's probably going to happen anyways, but I also think that Odell Beckham Jr. would have helped it. Anyways, Joe Douglas might have done something. And, God, I don't want to get on Boomer and Gio, but I might have to.
Wait a minute. You're getting on Boomer and Gio? Leave me out of this. Wait till Tierney gets back.
Might have to get on them. We'll do it on the other side of this break. Tiki and Tierney. Sal Licata sitting in for BT. Taking your calls here on WFAN at Tiki and Tierney.